everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for yet another edition of Leveraging Artificial Intelligence for Organizational Strategy on this very beautiful Monday, the 10th of November, 2025. This is the second Monday in the month of November, and this is the fifth edition of Leveraging Artificial Intelligence for Organizational Strategy here on Amazon Communication. I remain your host, Tolu Omodara. Have you been? Hope you had a restful weekend. I hope you've also been reviewing your organizational strategy, especially in the light of the things you've been sharing. It's a joy to be like the privilege to be doing this with you again. And more importantly, we hope that you are implementing some of these things we are sharing, or at the minimum, reviewing your current processes in the light of these fresh insights. Well, today we'll be continuing from where we stopped last week on using artificial intelligence for innovation. Using artificial intelligence for innovation part 2 is the focus of our conversation today. As always, we're going to start by doing a review and sharing some highlights of some of the things we shared last week. But like I always say, please endeavor to go back to the edition, to the episode. There are so many things that you will bring fresh nuggets from, right? Fresh actionable insights that can guide you, right? That you can work on, especially when you go back to listen. For those who have joined, please go back to listen. And for those who are yet to subscribe, please subscribe to Amage Radio Communications on YouTube. It's a plethora of resources for strategy, for management, even for public sector leadership, right? Not just for geopolitics as well as global economics. There's so much to learn from you across the range of your organizational hierarchy, the very top level of leadership, all the way down to the young and emerging leaders in your organization. Once again, you're very welcome to this fifth edition of Leveraging Artificial Intelligence for Organizational Strategy here on Amage Radio Communications, and I warmly welcome you to yet another exciting time. So last week, in the first segment of using artificial intelligence for innovation, we said that artificial intelligence provides structure to unstructured data. I'm going to say that again. Artificial intelligence helps to structure the massive but unstructured data that is available at very high velocity, high variety, and high volume, right? There's such a, the Internet of Things has made a huge and massive amount of information available, right? But this information often comes in an unstructured format, right? Today you have information coming from different kinds of channels that you didn't used to have them coming from, right? Today you have information coming from of course, supply chain. You have information being garnered from social media. You have information being gleaned from customer interactions, right? You have all kinds of channels, right, connecting the different data reservoirs. And because of this, there is a very massive, almost like an ocean comparable amount of information, which is literally endless, available in the 21st century artificial intelligence world. However, it can come in very unstructured formats, but for artificial intelligence. However, artificial intelligence, which basically is getting machines to think and act with human-like intelligence, artificial intelligence has enabled man to bring structure to this unstructured data, right? And that can come with a lot of advantage, right? So we said artificial intelligence provides structure to unstructured data, and this helps to enhance our understanding of the market and customers' articulated needs, which are also market gaps. I'll say it again. Artificial intelligence provides structure to unstructured data, and this helps to enhance our understanding of the market, and as well as our comprehension of customers' unarticulated needs, which are often market gaps, right? Now, what do we do with this understanding? We can program artificial intelligence to identify these exploitable market gaps for innovation. When we understand the customer's unsatisfied needs, when we identify the customer's unrealized expectations, we are basically seeing down a gap in the market, and that gap becomes the opportunity for innovation. So artificial intelligence can also be programmed to identify outliers. Now, these outliers in research basically don't follow a pattern, because normally artificial intelligence is about pattern recognition. So it can be argued that, well, if artificial intelligence is about identifying patterns, how then do we identify outliers, which definitely don't conform, so to say. But we also make the point last week that typically even outliers tend to have their own structure in a way. Remember, artificial intelligence is about bringing structure to unstructured data. Because if you look at outliers, for instance, like the pandemic, if you study them after a while, you begin to see that again, you see this through the body of data. Thank God for data, right? From the massive data available, you begin to see that, well, actually pandemics tend to happen once in every century, like every 100 years, right? And because of that pattern, it's easier to begin to position yourself as an organization. But we want to take advantage, if you have had that science, that foreknowledge, you want to position yourself as an organization that could take advantage of a disadvantage, or what looks like a disadvantage, but it's an outlier. Once you can identify that gap, especially because you can observe the structure in the seemingly unstructured data, and you can preempt that there may be a pandemic because we are in another 100-year cycle. Then you can be positioning yourself. If you are Zoom, for instance, one organization like Zoom, you can be positioning yourself to take advantage of that exploitable market gap, which also becomes an innovation opportunity, right? So basically, innovation is about creating strategic models, right, which did not exist before your industry. I say that again. Innovation is about creating strategic models which did not exist before in your industry, and this can be the more revolutionary kind of innovation. Like last week, we had said that there are two programs that are done, at least two programs on innovation, two quarter-long programs on innovation. The first I referenced last week was developing national innovation systems for executive capacity, but I've also done driving economic growth with innovation, right? Driving economic growth with innovation. Please check this on Amazon Radio Communications website. About between 10 to 12 episodes that you can learn a lot from. So I'm not going to repeat all the things I've said in those programs already. Developing national innovation systems, executive capacity, as well as driving economic growth with innovation. But one thing I want to reference is that we spoke about reinventing the entire market last week, and that is a revolutionary kind of innovation, right? So innovation is about creating strategic models which is not exist before in the industry. Now, this is the more revolutionary kind of innovation. We said last week that these are the disruptive levels of innovation where you create altogether new markets, and that's beautiful. There is, however, another level of innovation, which is the evolutionary innovation, right? Not the revolutionary one that disrupts the market and creates altogether new markets, right? But we're talking more about the evolutionary kind of innovation this week, and we'll come to that when we make just one more point from last week, and we move on to the first of this week. So last week, we also said that innovation is sometimes about creating altogether new processes, right? And that's very important. And how do you create altogether new processes? Again, we should begin with need identification. Very, very important, right? And artificial intelligence can be programmed to help you from that body of data to identify, the patterns, like you said, pattern recognition, and that pattern recognition is the forte of artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence does through things like machine learning, trends analysis, and so on and so forth. Well, this is where we're going to stop on our recap of last week's episode. Once again, please subscribe to our Amazon Radio Communications on YouTube. Invite your colleagues to, invite your team members to, invite even your managers or your leaders to do so. Like I said, there is a broad range of information and knowledge and insights that caters to the entire organizational hierarchy. So today we are going on to using artificial intelligence for innovation, part 2. And like I said, last week we spoke more to the revolutionary kinds of innovation, and this week we will be speaking more to the evolutionary kinds of innovation. Not the one that completely disrupts the market, but the one that improves upon what is existing, right? And why is this important? If you look at our professor program for innovation, and I also referenced this last week, there's a need to differentiate between creativity and innovation. Creativity is basically about coming up with new ideas, and that can be very revolutionary, right? It can also be evolutionary, but it can be largely revolutionary. To put a man on the moon, that's very revolutionary, right? But coming up with a new idea is different from innovation. Innovation is from conceptualization all the way to commercialization. I will repeat. Innovation is from conceptualization all the way to commercialization. It's not enough to come up with a new idea, there must also be a path to commercialization. And often, or let me say many times, right? Often, many times, that path to commercialization can be more evolutionary than revolutionary, right? And we're going to talk about how artificial intelligence helps you to get from conceptualization, which is largely about creativity, all the way to commercialization. And innovation is never complete until you have commercialization, right? When you develop innovation as part of your organizational strategy, or you choose to do more of innovation to broaden innovation as part of organizational strategy, then you must be thinking of commercialization. And you say, oh, I'm in the public sector. I'm not essentially interested as a leader, a public sector leader, in increasing profit. That's not necessarily true. Profit is a relative term in this context, right? In a public sector institution, profit can be reducing costs, profit can be, increasing the efficiency of the services being provided. However you want to capture it, it's still about ensuring that innovation or creativity brings profit, and that's when you have innovation. So let's continue. Now, by enabling one thing artificial intelligence does is that it certainly facilitates the process of analyzing and interpreting vast and complex reservoirs of data. I'm going to say that again. One thing artificial intelligence does is that it certainly enhances the process of analyzing and interpreting, a broad and complex amount of data at high level speed, unprecedentedly high level speed. Now, how does this help innovation, especially commercializing innovation? How does it help evolutionary innovation, right? Artificial intelligence helps to develop strategies that are more adaptive, precise, and forward-looking. I'll say that again. Artificial intelligence helps to develop strategies that are more adaptive, right, accurate, and foresighted. Now, let me explain how this helps evolutionary innovation. Evolutionary innovation, like I said, is about improving upon existing ideas, especially helping them to move from creativity to commercialization, from conceptualization to commercialization. Right? So the idea has been complete, but you need to adapt that idea. Now, artificial intelligence can help you to garner information that makes it easier to identify that path to commercialization. Artificial intelligence, remember we talked about predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics about 3 weeks ago, right? Artificial intelligence can help you simulate scenarios and say, okay, so we have this idea, right? If we use this idea in this particular way, if we test this idea in this particular market or with this demographic, right? What is likely to be the response of the market, right? Market there including the geography as well as the demography. What is likely going to be the response of the market to this new idea? By using artificial intelligence to preempt that predictive analytics as well as prescriptive analytics, which simulate scenarios, we are likely to be able to get to commercialization faster. Now, how would you do this without artificial intelligence? You will gather data still, but you will process it at a much lower level of speed than you will do with artificial intelligence. That's very important to note. Artificial intelligence will help you process that data more speedily. Artificial intelligence will help you to simulate the scenarios at a much faster rate, and that way, your path to commercialization is likely to be enhanced. I'll give us another example. So now artificial intelligence again is very good in helping us to, as I was saying, improve upon predictive analytics. So sometimes you are trying to use artificial intelligence for predictive analytics. But sometimes when you are really wanting to get to market fast, and that's one of the things you are doing with commercializing creativity, you also want to build the speed of the speed that brings advantage. You want to build the advantage of speed, right? By doing that, you can improve the predictive analytics process itself. Artificial intelligence can help you to identify how that prescriptive analytics process you are currently working on can be enhanced and improved upon, right? How it can be increasingly perfected. And the more perfect your predictive analytics process is, the faster you will understand what you're trying to test in the market, and the better it is in terms of adaptability. Don't forget, Actor Intelligence will help you to use the strategic processing of massive amounts of data to adapt your initial model, right? So when you come up with a creative idea, that's just your initial model, your version 1. Think about the Apple iPhone in your hand. I don't know whether that's your version 10 or version 11. I know Samsung Galaxy phone has at least come up with version 11 or thereabouts, or even more, right? So Active Intelligence can help you to move from version 1 to version 11 in a much faster way. First of all, by giving you information on the different responses to the version you are testing the market with, right? It gives you that information. One, gives you much more information because it has a higher capacity to process much more amount of data, number one. Number two, it also gives you more nuanced information because it can layer, different levels of insight in unstructured data. In other words, you can bring structured to unstructured data in a manner that helps you understand that response to the market much more speedily. And of course, even that process of predicting how the market will respond with a predictive analytics, another forte of artificial intelligence, that process itself, the predictive analytics process or the predictive analytics model that you're currently using, can also be improved upon, can also be perfected more through artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, in other words, can evaluate itself or can evaluate one of its own products, so to say, and that way it becomes easier to, to anticipate how the market will likely respond to what you're producing and to do it much more speedily. Now, I'm going to draw one more point about how artificial intelligence helps evolutionary innovation, and then we'll go on a quick commercial thing. So, in the world we are in, right, there is almost an unlimited amount of structured and unstructured data coming from different sources, right? I'm talking about, if they are not careful, near endless sources. These include, like I was alluding to earlier, customer interactions, supply chain, also social media platforms, right? Customer responses, customer feedback. Now, these things do not come in a structured manner. However, artificial intelligence can help you through elements like machine learning, that's the ability of the machine to learn from patterns, deep learning, that goes beyond surface learning to layer, unstructured data in order to identify the nuances, as well as natural language processing, which helps with analysis of customer interactions, right? Artificial intelligence can help you through all this to bring, a better understanding of the gaps in the market. Very, very important, right? And this helps you to customize your initial creation. I'll say that again. As artificial intelligence processing data through machine learning, deep learning, natural language processing, right? Artificial intelligence gives you a more apt a more apt understanding of the customer reaction to your initial creation. Remember, we're talking about evolutionary innovation here, right? As you understand the customer, responses to your initial initiative, then you can begin to adapt it. This is very important. We talk about adaptability, agility, fast responses, the ability to, respond as quickly as possible, and to adapt your initial creation to the market responses will help you to cement your first mover advantage. Otherwise, anything will happen. I remember when DeepSeek, almost disrupted the artificial intelligence market for those who were like the established forerunners like OpenAI and so on, who were like the forerunners of artificial intelligence. When DeepSeek, understood the gap in these creations, DeepSeek was very quick to take that and provide it as an almost how would I put it, next to zero cost. I want to use that. And almost next to zero cost. And that way, DeepSeek was almost going to use the advantage of cost to disrupt the market. However, I dare say that initial cost of creation was not borne by DeepSeek. right? What this team did was that they took the customer reactions to the initial creation and they protected the initial creation, right? But if you as the initial creator are able to take those customer reactions to initial creation more speedily, then you leave no room for little or no room for competition to cash in on the reactions that you should quickly use to improve your creation. Talk about making sense. This is very, very important. The language of the 21st century artificial intelligence world is underpinned by speed. I will say that again. The language of the 21st century artificial intelligence world is underpinned by speed. You do not just have to move, you must move very quickly. Adaptability, agility, strategic speed, high level conflict responsiveness are non-negotiable in the world of today. So it's not enough to have a creation that will allow your competition to improve upon, right? And if you do not want to be copied, don't be a pace setter. So anticipate your competition and build speed into your creation process, right? Build speed into the process of creativity that will help you to lock it into commercialization that then becomes worthy of the main innovation. Without effective commercialization, we are still operating a level of creativity, not innovation. But to get to that level of commercialization, we bring the insights we need from the customer reactions, the market response, the initial creations as quickly as possible, and to perfecting your initial model ASAP as soon as possible, and to get back into the market with the more refined version of your initial creation. I remain your host, Tolu Omodara, here on Amogari Communications, coming to you gladly and very delightedly with the 5th edition of Leveraging Artificial Intelligence for Organizational Strategy using Artificial Intelligence for Innovation. We'll take a quick break now and we'll be back.
Harmogate, founded in 2008 out of a desire to build transgenerational structures for organizations, institutions, and nations. We have worked with large businesses, international development organizations, and public sector ministries and agencies. Harmogate, our uniqueness is that we do not just work for you, we work with you. For example, we do not leave you to the task after sourcing talent that will help the new hire settle into robust leadership development programs. We are technical experts in advising and supporting institutions on strategy and leadership, artificial intelligence, strategic human resource management, public sector reform, finance, audit and tax, FAT, and strategic communications. We do all this and more out of a desire to transform nations through institutions and organizations. For further inquiries, email contact@thearmogate.org or call +234 810 999 6666, +234 807 957 4151, and +161 0504 6026. www.thearmogate.org. Armogate, building to endure and transforming nations through institutions and organizations.
Welcome back and hope you're enjoying this edition of Leveraging Artificial Intelligence for Amogate, Leveraging Artificial Intelligence for Organizational Strategy here on Amogate Radio Communications. And we're very glad to have you with us. I remain your host, Tolu Omodara. We're looking at using artificial intelligence for innovation and focusing on the evolutionary innovation. Now, like we're speaking, artificial intelligence has a huge capacity to detect patterns, to identify associations in very high volume, high velocity, high variety data, right? Very high variety data that ordinarily it would take the human mind the average human mind a while to identify those patterns from. However, with artificial intelligence, we can detect those insights that we need to modify our initial creation, right? Our initial innovative effort, right? The beginning of our innovative effort, in other words, the first creation or the first model of what we are attempting to launch into the market. With artificial intelligence, we can glean insights from that high variety, high volume, high velocity data much more speedily, right? And that way, we can be quick to modify the initial creation, and we launch it into the market way ahead of competition, right? Competition that may just be waiting for us to finish with our initial question and then perfect with our initial question. So we gain advantage over us as we actually finish initial. Now, one thing we also need to know is that with artificial intelligence, you have the opportunity to actually use another model. So before, I always remember those days where we used to have CAAN, platform as a service. Then later we had SAAN, software as a service. Well, today we actually have what is called artificial intelligence as a service. And that comes with its own advantage too, right? With AI as a service, we are able to, use AI as a service much more efficiently. And I see what I mean by that, right? Some organizations are going to have the resources to invest in all the accompanying infrastructure that they need to exploit artificial intelligence fully. However, some don't even need to do that, right? They can just get artificial intelligence tools and capabilities, right? Such as the machine learning, the deep learning, the natural language processing, and so on that I've been talking about. They can just get it via a cloud computing platform on a subscription basis, and that's happening a lot now, right? And that itself can help innovation. I don't know if you know that we've gone past the days when we needed coders like before, those with coding skills. Now artificial intelligence is being used to code. Artificial intelligence is being used to create software. So if you have an idea and you want to, turn that idea into a software, and you don't want to invest in the full artificial intelligence infrastructure and you want to do it efficiently, you can just pay for some of these artificial intelligence as a service tools. Now, how does this help the evolutionary innovation process? Again, remember what we said, it's about profitability, and profitability sometimes they are getting to the market fast. So maybe at that beginning, remember you are conceptualizing an idea, you're trying to move from conceptualization to commercialization. Maybe at the beginning you don't want to invest too much cost because you're still testing the market, right? You're still testing what you have come up with. You can, instead of investing fully in the artificial intelligence infrastructure, the full scale artificial intelligence infrastructure, you can also use artificial intelligence as a service to, to create and to adapt your initial ideas, right? To develop those initial. Sometimes if it's a software solution or idea, you can use AI as a service to do this, and then you can do it more efficiently. You can bring down the cost that you ordinarily have invested into it. If, for instance, you had to engage the services of a coding company or a coder, right? You can now use artificial intelligence as a service, number one, to develop your idea, to create your model, especially if you're talking about software solutions. And of course, you can do this again without investing in the full scale of artificial intelligence infrastructure, because you can now leverage AI as a service, which offers you all of those services that you need, like machine learning and deep learning and cloud computing. You can offer this to you through cloud computing, and you just pay for it as a subscription. Right? So again, this is an evolutionary innovation, right? You are evolving, right? It's not revolutionary. It's probably not a whole new idea that can disrupt the market. Maybe it's an idea that is just perfecting what is existing, or it's an idea that is potentially disrupting what you are doing in an evolutionary manner, right? So you can also use AI as a service, as an organization to create your software solution if that's the kind of idea you're coming up with, and you can also use it, through cloud computing subscriptions and help you produce efficiently. Because basically, when we are talking about commercialization here, and commercialization begins with the process of creation. You can create more efficiently because of things like AI as a service, artificial intelligence as a service. This can enable you to leverage all of the advantages of artificial intelligence, like machine learning and deep learning and natural language processing. You can use all of these to, to identify exactly what you want, or what you need to improve upon as you are pursuing your initial creation, and you can do this all in a manner that is as efficient as possible. Now, I want to jump 2 more points and we'll begin to round up for today. The first thing is that when we're talking about artificial intelligence, remember again that artificial intelligence broadly speaking, is about the ability of machines, right, to carry out activities that are normally within the range of human intelligence, but to carry them out with a relative level of effectiveness, using things like pattern recognition, natural language processing, and so on and so forth, right? So artificial intelligence is something that has helped you, we talked about it about 2 weeks ago, help you to program algorithms, right? And these algorithms help you to determine how you want to learn from the massive amount of data available, right? And also help you to determine how you want to respond speedily, even to things like customer feedback. Very, very important, right? Now, why is this important? Why is this understanding of your ability to program algorithms important? It's also important because when you are creating, right, and you are testing a market and you're perfecting your initial model, you sometimes need to use artificial intelligence to respond speedily. Right? Remember, artificial intelligence has the ability, that's why I remember the definition, has the ability to behave with human-like intelligence. Don't ever forget that. That's why it is intelligence, but just artificial, because the humans are programmed with the things like them, right? It's still human-led. We are the ones still programming it. But sometimes you also don't have the luxury of time to always come back and respond immediately. Sometimes you want to show your market that you're very responsive. So don't forget that you can also program the algorithm to respond to market, to respond to customers' reactions, to respond to customers' feedback, right, in a manner like you want. This is very, very possible. It's about algorithms. You are saying if you get this, you respond that way. If you notice 3, 4, 5 words responding recurring, repeatedly, occurring repeatedly, reoccurring, then you can respond this way. Now, when you program that into the response, into the machine, and the machine is able to respond to humans, especially to customer feedback at the early stage of your prototyping, of your piloting, speedily, then you are also more likely to quickly the feedback to even other versions you are yet to create. Let me explain what I mean by that. So here you are, you're using artificial intelligence to create a model, and you also want artificial intelligence to respond to the market, to respond to customer feedback as soon as possible. In other words, you don't want the customer to wait till your human beings are back, right? That way, you can program the machine to say, you know what, if the restaurant, if X number of words are coming up X number of times, then you can give the customer these options and see how the customer will respond to these options. What is that doing? You are still doing your adaptive speed. You are getting more quicker. You are getting a more quicker approach to your um, uh, your evolutionary innovation, right? So you're moving from version 1 to version 2, you're anticipating version 2 and version 3, and you're saying to the customer, what is presented with this version and what is presented with that version. And it's still the artificial intelligence, it's still a machine, right? Is responding to the customers that way. That way, in this way, you are ready for prototyping even your version 2 and your version 3 into artificial intelligence. Let me just make one or two more points in closing and we'll wrap up. Just so we know, what is something in this program, whether we like it or not, artificial intelligence is here to stay. It's about how do we leverage artificial intelligence for organizational strategy, how do we use it efficiently. And I just want to say that one thing we must understand is that a lot of organizations leaders, a lot of leaders of organizations are already asking humans to justify things like further investment in human capital, right? Because the question is now that show me why artificial intelligence cannot do what you're asking me to hire more people for. For instance, Google is in talks to pour more money into Anthropic, right? And that's an AI startup. And that's an AI startup that is rivaling open AI, for instance. Now, if they do that, if they pour more money into Anthropic, and Anthropic also, does more. Anthropic, by the way, is the main rival to OpenAI, which is the maker of ChatGPT. So when Anthropic comes up with another version, of GPT, or a version of ChatGPT that is even more responsive, or at least compete effectively, the question is going to be, why am I going to have to hire humans when I'm getting more and more versions of artificial intelligence tools that can do what humans can do even faster. For instance, there is a company called Shopify. Shopify is saying to his managers, for instance, that they need to prove that artificial intelligence can do a better job before requesting them to hire someone new. Of course, we know that companies like KPMG, the consulting company, is already saying that the early intern roles are being done more effectively than artificial intelligence. The Shopify I was referring to a few moments ago, for instance, laid off 20% of its workforce. I think that was about 2023. And what they did is that earlier that year, before they laid off 20% of their workforce, they began to improve their customer service effectiveness by making generative artificial intelligence to handle some of these things that support employees as previously done. Now, we are not getting into the debate of the morality of laying off workers. Like I already said, we believe in the hybrid way. To go back to what we did about 2 or 3 weeks ago, artificial intelligence still has to be programmed by human beings, still has to be human-led. And we've already said data, research insights that show that artificial intelligence is best deployed when it's done collaboratively with human intelligence. But the one thing we want to do, and that's why we encourage people, is to make sure artificial intelligence is ready, whether we like it or not. So as leaders, the question is how do we leverage artificial intelligence for things like evolutionary innovation so that we are being much more strategic, and being strategic will help us to do more with less. Will also help us to gain the advantage of speed, strategic speed that gets us ahead of competition and also gets us ahead of ourselves very initiatives. So we are quick to improve on what we did before we move in for competition to improve on our own initial position because we are being slow with evolutionary innovation. I think this is what I'm going to stop today. I will continue next week by those days to continue to look at the advantages of artificial intelligence and how we can leverage artificial intelligence for organizational strategy, especially as leaders. Thank you so much for being here. We have 10 times presentation next week by those days. And until then, remember we have fantastic programs from Tuesday, from Monday all the way to Friday. So for the rest of the week, from Tuesday to Friday, we continue to learn very richly and robustly across the breadth of history and the very children. Thank you so much. Thank you.